For the record, my name is Sharon Durkin, District 8 City Councilor, and I'm the chair of the Boston City Council Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. Today is June 18th, and the exact time is 2 o'clock. This hearing is being recorded. It is also being live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, Fios Channel 964. Written comments may be sent to the committee email at ccc.plandev@boston.gov and will be made part of the public record and available to all councilors. Public testimony will be taken at the end of this hearing. Individuals will be called on in the order in which they've signed up to testify, and they'll have 2 minutes. If you're interested in testifying in person, please add your name to the sign-up sheet near the entrance of the chamber. If you're looking to testify virtually, please email our central staff liaison. Does a great job. Thank you for your work. Shane.pack@boston.gov for the link, and your name will be added to the list, and that's Shane, SHANE.PAC@boston.gov. Today's hearing is on docket 0648, message and order. For your approval, an order authorizing the City of Boston Streets Cabinet to enter into a contract for a period of up to 10 years for the services of an operator for the city's public bike shares program, Bluebikes. The contract term would begin 2026. The council's permission to enter into this contract the City Council's permission to enter into a contract of this type for a period of more than 3 years is required by Section 12 and Chapter 30B of General Laws. This matter was sponsored by Michelle Wu and was referred to the committee on March 12, 2025. And then docket 0720, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $9 million in the form of a grant for the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program awarded by the United States Department of Transportation and administered by the Transportation Department. The grant will fund safety and design construction in intersections to employ low-cost, high-impact strategies through a safety and equity lens for complete streets. This matter was sponsored by Mayor Michelle Wu and referred to the committee on April 2nd, 2025. Today, I am joined by my colleagues in order of arrival, Councilor Flynn and Councilor Murphy. Again, thank you, Councilor Flynn, for your perfect attendance record in this committee. I want to introduce our panel, which is Kim Foltz, Director of Boston Bluebikes, the Streets Cabinet, and Lydia Housley, Capital Projects Design Director and Streets Cabinet. For the Streets Cabinet, because we have 2 dockets and we have 2 folks that are here from the administration, we're going to hear both dockets at the same time, and we'll have up to 2 rounds of questions. And because of the attendance today, I am going to allow for folks to go as long as they want and get their questions answered. So I'm going to waive opening statements because these are two dockets that are unrelated, but you can feel free to do an opening statement and then begin your questioning. So today we are reviewing 2 dockets that represent strategic investments in the safety, accessibility, and sustainability of Boston's transportation network. As we consider these items, we seek to continue underwriting our commitment to every resident across the entire city with resources that will allow us to move through our streets with safety and efficiency. The first docket, 0648, supports Boston's investment and renewed commitment to our public bike system, Bluebikes. It asks the council to approve the administration to enter into a 10-year agreement for the services of an operator for Bluebikes. In 2016, the City Council authorized a similar agreement, and the length and certainty of the lasting agreement helps spur the success of Bluebikes today in a way that we all enjoy. As District 8 City Councilor, I can directly speak to the impact of the program it has had on my district. And I'm proud to say that of the top 10 Bluebike stations in the entire system, all of the Boston-located ones touch District 8. My constituents and residents of Boston rely on reliable, expansive Bluebike system for their daily needs throughout the year. As we continue to push forward a more equitable and climate-resilient transportation future, expanding access to bike infrastructure is critical. Bluebikes offer residents and visitors a sustainable, affordable way to get around while also reducing congestion that pre-automobile planned cities such as Boston suffer from, usually. The second docket, 0720, authorizes the City of Boston to accept and expend $9 million from the U.S. Transportation Department for the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program. These funds will allow BTD to implement a low-cost, high-impact improvements at key intersections, targeting issues such as speeding, visibility, and pedestrian safety through our Complete Streets initiative. This is not just about infrastructure, it's about lives. Whether you're a child walking to school or a senior crossing the street, these improvements can and will make a meaningful difference. Together, these dockets move us closer to a city where you can move safely, your transportation is more efficient, and we're doing everything we can to be great environmental stewards of Boston. Look forward to this hearing with the Streets Cabinet today and gathering additional details around the goals for these two dockets. So with that, I'm going to let the two panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll go straight into questioning. So Kim Foltz and then Lydia Housley.
Hi, my name is Kim Foltz. I'm the director of Boston Bikes. We're in the Policy and Planning Division in the Streets Cabinet. And I'm speaking in support of the first docket, 0648, which is the long-term contract for our bike share system, Bluebikes. And I just wanted to provide a little bit of background about this order. As Councilor Durkin described, the order is required, or your approval is required for a contract of this type that's longer than 3 years. We got similar approval in 2017 when we last executed our bike share operations contract. And it's really critical for us to be able to provide the long-term stability of the system and ensure that provide the assurance to our operator, whoever wins the bid, that they will have the stability to really invest in the successful operations of the system. It also allowed us to attract the private capital, the support from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts, which is our title sponsor. They provided a title sponsorship of $18 million in 2018. They renewed that title sponsorship in 2023 for $28 million. So again, having this kind of long-term stability of the system really allows it to flourish. The contract would be structured very similar to our current contract. It's a revenue sharing model. So what that means is the user revenues and the title sponsorship revenues are split between our operator and the municipal owners of the system. That means that we haven't had to rely on municipal funding to pay for the operations of the system itself. It also really incentivizes our operator to do a good job. When our users are happy, they take more trips, they buy more memberships, more passes, and that generates more revenue for them. So it really aligns the incentives in a way that it wasn't the case prior to 2017. So appreciate your considering this order and encourage you to support it to ensure this long-term stability of our bike share system.
Thank you. Lydia?
Thanks so much, Councilor. My name is Lydia Housley. I'm the Capital Project Design Director for the Streets Cabinet. I sit in Public Works. I'm here before you today for docket number 0720, looking to authorize and expend a grant that we were approved for through the U.S. Department of Transportation. In 2022, we applied for and received a grant through a competitive grant process with the federal government. That appropriates funds to support safety investments at high crash, high risk locations throughout the country. We were granted an award for $11 million, $9 million of those are being federal, and a $2.25 million local match. And with the grant, we will be able to design, go through planning process and engagement, and ultimately construct safety improvements at 9 different intersections throughout the city. These intersections were, identified through rigorous analysis and through community conversations. Some of them are outfalls from plans that have been previously completed, and this will allow us to implement those. And so we're eager to get going with this investment. The application was submitted in 2022. It took some time for all of the I's to be dotted and T's to be crossed, but we did receive a signed agreement between both the city and the federal government in 2024. And in a time of uncertainty, having this signed grant agreement is a really big win for us, and we're very excited to move it along and actually get into the nuts and bolts. We are in the process of developing an RFP to put out for a competitive bid to bring on a design team and an engagement team, and would look forward to any questions you have, and ultimately working with you all to bring these projects to fruition.
Thank you so much. And just to start out with you, Lydia, thank you for your testimony. Just curious if you could, I know I have a list of the 9 locations. Could you just read those out so for the awareness of my colleagues?
Yes, I'm happy to. And some of them are ones that we've been talking about very recently. And so we're really eager for the opportunity to, I think, bring more resources and time and investment to some of these intersections. So Councilor Flynn, I know that we've been talking a lot about Andrew Square. Andrew Square is one of the intersections included in this, and it would allow for a more substantial investment in the safety challenges that we've all seen take place and unfortunately that have claimed lives. Saratoga and Bennington Street in East Boston is one of the intersections included. 2 intersections along Blue Hill Ave, one at American Legion Highway and one at Columbia Road. 2 in the kind of downtown Boston proper area, Washington, Neeland, and Stewart intersection, and then just next door, the Tremont-Stewart intersection. And then further south, kind of on the Jamaica Plain, Roxbury line, Seaver Street and Walnut Street, where there have been some recent investments, but there were portions of the Tremont Columbus Phase 1 project that did not address kind of the corners where there have been pedestrian and sightline issues that persist. And then finally, an intersection down by Loesch Park in Dorchester at the intersection of Brent and Wainwright.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to open it up to my colleagues for any questions, just now that we have the locations. And I think you both have done a great job explaining the purpose of the grant. So, Councilor Flynn, you're first. And there's no time limit.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the administration team that is here. I'm going to ask several questions. Is the plan to run a bike lane to every Bluebike station?
Is there a plan to run a bike lane to every Bluebike station? We work closely with our colleagues who are designing and implementing our bike on street infrastructure. We don't have a current plan to install bike lanes to every bike share station.
How does the city account for Bluebikes that developers are forced to pay or forced to buy as part of their mitigation packages?
Sorry, just to make sure that I understand the question, how we are requiring development mitigation packages. So we have developed bike parking guidelines, which include obligations for our contributions and financial contributions and set aside of space from developers to expand the bike share network. There's a formula that's established based on the land use type and either the square footage or the number of beds, depending on the land use type. And we have some minimum contributions. And so the purpose of that is to ensure that as we increase the number of people living or working in an area, we are at the same time expanding the bike share network to allow for that increase in people there who would be utilizing the bike share system.
Is that optional or required for the developer to pay into that?
They are guidelines, so they aren't codified as requirements. But they are, something that our development planning colleagues work with the developers on.
Though they could opt out of that?
Ultimately, they come up with, the transportation action plans agreements, and then what's written into those agreements is then what's binding.
Okay. Does the city directly own the Bluebike network in Boston, or is the ownership through a third party?
We own all of the stations and the bikes that are in Boston, or rather, we own all of the stations, all of the bikes that originated with those stations. Once they're released into the world, they travel throughout the network. But yes, the equipment is ours.
Okay. Where do the purchases show up on the city's balance sheet in terms of Bluebikes and the fees that are collected, or the money that comes into the city? Where does it show up in the budget or in the balance sheet?
So we have an external fund account, 11054, I believe it is, that allows us to deposit the sponsorships and user revenues from our share of those things, as well as the sponsorships from and contributions from development. And then that's all utilized for the bike share system itself.
So the Blue Bike employees, who are they? They're not city employees, obviously.
No, so the people who are running the system,
Yeah.
basically, yeah. So our current contract is with Lyft Bikes and Scooters. They're a division of Lyft, the ride-hail company. And then they have a subcontractor called Motivate. They are a fully owned subsidiary of Lyft. So they employ Motivate does all of the operations work, so the people you'll see out on the street moving the bikes around, doing the bike maintenance, doing the station maintenance. Motivate employees who are working for Bluebikes are all unionized. The small number of people who are staffing the Lyft side of things, I don't believe are unionized.
Okay. Does the city monitor and set working conditions at all? I know some of them are unionized, but does the city monitor the benefits that these workers get? So
we have, obviously, as a vendor, executing a contract with them, we have requirements, our standard requirements of any vendor that they abide by. For example, our wage ordinances and things like that. We do try to write into our contracts, provisions around fair employment practices and things like that. So we'd certainly be happy to, work with you or take some suggestions about things that we can implement in our upcoming contract.
Okay. So did you mention there was a request for proposal that the city put out in choosing an operator? Was that?
Yeah, so we have a request for proposal that is out right now.
Okay.
It was issued by MAPC, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, on behalf of the municipalities that are participating in Bluebikes or that would participate in Bluebikes. Because it's a regional system, the RFP isn't issued individually by the cities. It's done collectively. So the proposals are due at the end of this month, June 30th.
And who chooses the operator? Is it the city or is it that municipal group?
There's a committee made up of several of the municipalities. So the City of Boston, I'm on that committee. And then the cities of Cambridge, Somerville, Brookline, I believe Everett, and one of the newer municipalities, Arlington maybe,
Okay.
is on that committee, as well as MAPC.
Okay, my final question, and if you don't have an answer, maybe you can get it to me later this week. Could you get me a figure, or do you know what the figure would be in terms of how much money developers paid for to support the Bluebikes program through mitigation? Do you have that figure?
I don't have it off the top of my head, but I'm happy to pull that together. Are you looking for a particular time period?
How long has it been here in Boston?
Since 2011.
2011. Maybe the last 5 years or 6 years.
Okay.
Just so I can get an idea. I am concerned about developers have told me that they don't really have a choice at all. That it's really not optional to pay into the system or decline to paying into the system. So I just wanted to get a little bit more information on that, but it is voluntary. They don't have to pay into that system, I guess, right?
Yeah, so my understanding is that they are guidelines, but we our planners do try to implement them evenly so that it's not sort of a, depending on your relationship, you get a better or a worse deal. It's something for sort of equity and fairness among all developers.
Okay. And then, Madam Chair, so may I request that information maybe over the last 6 years?
Absolutely. I can send as part of the follow-up from this.
And thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the administration team that is here.
Thanks, Councillor Flynn. Councillor Murphy?
Thank
and I
you.
love that green. You look really good in green.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. A lot of my questions you've touched on, but I'll just ask the questions to get more of a deeper insight. So it seems as though with the contract duration and oversight for our Bluebikes that a 10-year operator contract falls well beyond the typical 3-year procurement cycle. So how will the city ensure robust performance monitoring and opportunities to reevaluate and terminate, if necessary, any vendors that may be underperforming?
Yeah, it's a great question. So our current contract, which also was a similar term, it was a 5-year initial contract with 2 2-year options to extend. Mm-hmm. And we built in evaluation criteria and a process into our sort of operating procedures with our partner municipalities. So we went through a pretty robust process as we were approaching the end of that initial 5-year term to evaluate them. And so we will presumably do the same thing. We have a very strong regional partnership, particularly among the municipalities that have been a part of Bike Share since it launched in 2011. We've been working at this together for a long time. And so between Cambridge and Somerville and Boston, and then to a lesser extent Brookline, we really, we've got a lot of people who have, a lot of experience in this, and we really work together to make strong processes like that. We also will include a lot of performance, key performance indicators in the contract. We'd like to strengthen that in our new contract relative to our existing contract for things to require some liquidated damages from the operator when they're not performing. We have some of those things in our current contract, but quite frankly, it's not nearly strong enough. And when we look around at similar systems elsewhere in the country, some of those liquidated damages are applied automatically if they're failing to meet the rebalancing requirements, for example, keeping bikes and docks available. They're just automatically fined every month that happens. And so when you've got those sort of automated sticks for the operator, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, that was going to be one of just my logistic questions. There's a station right across the street from mine. Oftentimes there's no bikes there. Like, what is that process? And who should you call when the bikes are being used but then never returning to certain stations? Or it seems like they're always out at certain spots.
Yeah, so you can certainly reach out to us. We have my team has weekly meetings with our operator, and they've gotten a lot better at those kinds of things, at being responsive when we point out a particular pain point. We do have, they call it rideability. That's the metric that's in the contract. They have rideability requirements, but they're applied at the city scale. In our new contract, we're looking to apply those at the neighborhood scale, and also have some sort of backstop so that no station is allowed to be empty or full. Both situations are a problem. So make sure that no station can be empty or full longer than, a stated period of time. I think in the RFP we said it's 24 hours. It might even be shorter than that.
Okay, the RFP references expanded services, including e-bikes and 240-plus new stations over the next 5 years. What criteria will the Streets Cabinet, and you mentioned that strong partnership with MAPC, use to evaluate prospective operators' ability to scale and maintain? You kind of touched on that already with the last answer, but.
Yeah, and just to be clear, that RFP is for the system-wide Bluebikes. So the number of stations that we anticipated growing by, that is not primarily in the city of Boston. We have been in a major period of expansion. We're about halfway through that right now. We expect to finish that up in large part by the end of this year. So we will continue to add stations in Boston, but it will be primarily as new developments come online and that the financial contribution and space obligations for bike share are come to be. So, I'm sorry, then your specific question?
No, that was good. You
Okay.
answered, yeah. And I have just a couple about the 9 intersections. You mentioned where they are, and I do know, like Saratoga Speedway, how it's referenced. So I think the spots you mentioned, I think I know all of them, and they're good places to target. What if it's an intersection, you mentioned like 2 on Blue Hill Ave. I don't think the one up near Columbia is part of the Blue Hill Ave. It's too far up. But if they're having other infrastructure plans and investments happening also.
Yeah, it's a great question. Thanks so much. So several of the intersections that are included in the grant do have other projects that are either ongoing or planned or expected. The Blue Hill Ave at American Legion and Blue Hill Ave at Columbia are both currently also intersections that would be touched by other projects. Mm-hmm. The Blue Hill Ave kind of multimodal project, which is also the subject of a federal grant. I know y'all had a hearing about that last week. And Columbia, which is part of the Columbia Ave redesign project. In those cases where there have either been recent investments or there is an ongoing project, we would likely be taking a slightly different approach with those intersections where we'd be looking for either early action implementation that we could do, since some of those projects either have an uncertain future or their timeline for delivery is just, quite a ways off. And there are things that we can do in the near term using quick build tools, using signals, using, our toolkit that we could deploy quite rapidly. So we would take a little bit of a different approach for those versus other intersections where there are no otherwise planned investments, where we would be looking at a kind of full reboot. Yep. Soup to nuts.
Okay. No other questions. Thank you for that, though. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Councilor Murphy. Councilor Weber, we don't have a time limit, so ask your heart's desire.
Thank you. I'm really just here to learn. But I guess did you discuss this? What impact the Trump administration is going to have on our efforts to have programs like this?
Are you, both of us?
I guess,
Yeah.
yes.
Excellent question. I think I kind of feel like we don't know what we don't know yet. We're certainly concerned about tariffs with respect to bike share, and because our bikes and stations are manufactured overseas. Our current operator, who is likely to be our future operator, did move their manufacturing out of China in anticipation of the potential tariffs. Little did they know it would be as broad-based as they have been. So there's that. Besides that, I think we do get federal transportation funding through the MPO, through the Community Connections Grant Program. That's they've earmarked $2 million a year for our bike share system, our state of good repair, and that's formula funded. So hopefully that doesn't become isn't at risk in the future, but it feels like we don't really know. So For the time being, we feel like we have a pretty reliable source of funding for ensuring the state of good repair of our equipment. Our equipment is aging. We have invested both city capital and then also grant funding into replacing the equipment, and that's going to continue to be a concern. So we'll see.
Okay. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, a little bit of a different situation since mine is the project that I'm here talking about is a grant funded project through a USDOT discretionary grant program. Unlike some grants, there's plenty of scrambling going on, but this grant does have an agreement in place that's fully executed on both sides. So we feel quite confident that, this is going to move forward. We are taking steps to make sure we're adhering to schedule requirements. So this grant does require that we complete all of the work included in the grant by kind of the summer of 2029. So we're going to be, working to get our RFP out, develop plans, do engagement, and then ultimately get construction completed by that date.
Okay, and so just in terms of the basic structure, so there's one operator, like this, we're contracting with. Who's the operator?
It's Lyft Bikes and Scooters, so they're a division of Lyft.
LYFT?
LYFT, correct. Okay. Our contract in 2017 was executed with Motivate, which was a large player in the bike share space. They were subsequently acquired by Lyft. They now are, they subcontract with Lyft. They provide the operations side of our contract. So they are a subsidiary of Lyft Bikes and Scooters. Lyft is the dominant player in the bike share space in North America. There's really one other major company that provides similar services in other cities. But it's not in nearly as many. It's been pretty difficult to, have another vendor other than Lyft.
Okay, and in terms of the data of the state of repair, or bless you, how many bikes are functional on a given day? Do you have stats on that?
Yeah, we have.
What are we shooting for? Where are we at?
So, in terms of number of bikes, like on the road in a given day,
usable,
roughly 85% to 90% of the fleet is what we're looking for. We don't have. It's one of the things that we don't have in our current contract. We don't have a performance indicator, sort of a required contractual obligation on the vendor, and we would like to see that in place in our next contract.
Okay.
But state of good repair is more the investment from the city is more substantial when it comes to not maintaining, but sort of replacing wholesale the stations themselves as they reach the end of their useful life. The maintenance of the sort of day-to-day maintenance is a financial obligation on our operator, and we expect that it will continue to be so.
Okay. Let me see. So in terms of e-bikes, how many e-bikes do we have, and what are the goals there? And
you stole my question. I let you go on too long.
Sorry.
Please answer.
No. You can hold on. Hold on. Yeah, you can answer that, but it's coming from the chair. You can answer to the chair.
Great. All right, Madam Chair. Excellent question. So,
Chair. Yes.
We
Glad you thought of it.
currently have a little over 700 e-bikes that the city of Boston owns, and then there's another 50 or so, no, maybe more like closer to 100 that are owned by other municipalities.
And I just want to add that he represents the back of Mission Hill and I represent Mission Hill. And we would like to both advocate for more electric bikes on Mission Hill because we can't, what we're finding is that essentially people are they're never brought back up because you don't want to bike up that hill again. So anyway, so I'll let you finish, but I just want to make sure that
Yes.
we together as Mission Hill's representatives, I usually claim the entirety of Mission Hill, but he has the back of the hill, and we really do need, there are certain places that electric needs to be prioritized.
Yes, understood. And I think perhaps we could, it's difficult to prioritize where the bikes are because they can go anywhere and they tend to follow the same patterns as the rest of the bikes, the rest of the system. However, if we are ever able to succeed in electrifying some stations, and if we built in sort of incentives for users to dock e-bikes at stations that were electrified, that might give us a little bit of a lever to be able to, say, get more e-bikes in Mission Hill. As a share of our fleet, it's system-wide, it's about 15% or so. It's pretty low. We've been cautious in the addition of e-bikes. In part, almost entirely, that's because we really want to ensure that the e-bikes are affordable for people. And so we didn't want to create kind of this two-tier transportation system where people with lots of discretionary income could use the e-bikes whenever they wanted, and then the rest of us would just have to use it as a kind of luxury thing.
Well, and I have a bit of a suspicion. The mayor was riding an electric bike on Bike to Work Day. Did someone have to get her an electric bike on Bike to Work Day? Because I was like, there's no way that, I'm unable to find an electric bike on any given day.
Yes.
So on Bike to Work Day, finding an electric bike seems like a little bit of a hard thing to
Those
accomplish.
bikes were there waiting for her at, I think, Jackson Square is where she started, or Roxbury Crossing,
It was
somewhere
early
like that.
in the morning.
Yes.
The hard-hitting questions.
Yeah.
Yes. But so the municipalities subsidize the costs of e-bikes for users. Lyft would have been charging 17 cents a minute rather than 10 cents a minute for members. And we really felt like for a typical trip of, 15, 20 minutes, it just was it would be too high for people to be able to use it on a regular basis. Income eligible members pay 7 cents a minute rather than the 10 that Lyft would charge. And so we've been cautious about not introducing too many e-bikes to not sort of overburden our municipal subsidy. And we wanted to kind of see how it went and, then maybe grow the fleet more gradually. The other thing is the e-bikes themselves are much more expensive. They just require an incremental cost every minute in a way that the pedal bikes don't. And the pedal bikes are great. They've been these workhorses that get, millions of people, millions of trips around our city. So we don't want to just abandon them and, throw too much capital at the e-bikes. And we just want to be very thoughtful about it and make sure we're not sort of getting out over our skis.
And since I interrupted Councilor Weber, do you have any other questions?
I just two quick ones. On terms of safety, do we have numbers on injuries or, especially head injuries associated with the bike share program? My sense is it's just you can't go fast enough, but I don't. As somebody who's biked a lot and relied on a helmet, I get nervous watching people without a helmet bike. But.
We only have so our operator is required to report to us anytime there's an incident, a crash that they're made aware of. Obviously, we're only able to report things or get the data on things that we know about. The data is often pretty limited in terms of, the nature of the crash. So we really don't have anything about, say, percentage of the crashes that result in head injuries. On balance, they are very safe. There are not very many, really not very many incidents on bike share, and it is really for the reason that you said, that you can't go very fast. They're big, heavy bikes. Anecdotally, we are seeing more crashes on e-bikes. I wouldn't even say anecdotally. We see more crashes on e-bikes proportional to their share of the fleet as a whole. So it is something that we want to, continue to keep an eye on, and, consider maybe reducing the speed that the e-bikes are capped at, so people can't get up to as high speeds as they can currently.
Okay, last question on placement of the stations. Who has input into that? And then, I feel like where people want daylighting, I feel like that would be good to have those, but how do those decisions get made on where the stations go, and can we use them for daylighting purposes? Absolutely.
I love them for daylighting purposes because it feels like you're accomplishing, multiple goals at one time. And it really is, flex posts, but it's more effective than flex posts at keeping people from parking in a place where you really don't want them to. And we can remove the vertical elements from a station. Absolutely, the ad panel can be removed if it's going to be in the sight line. And now our newest station type does allow us to have a station without a kiosk, so that's the part of the station that you would walk up to and pay. So we don't need to include that element. The decision on where stations go is all done by my team and the Streets Cabinet leadership. And it's part of the reason that we've really continued to insist that we own the equipment, or ensure that we own the equipment in our contract structure, so that it's not our vendor that's making the decisions about where these things go. For a whole lot of reasons, it's felt really important to us to make sure that that's a municipal decision. We are working very hard, as I mentioned before, to expand the network by 100 stations. We're about 40% of the way through that in terms of stations on the ground that we've added since about a year ago. And we hope to complete that by the end of this year or early first quarter of next year.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Sorry for stealing your question.
Oh, that's okay, Counselor. And also, you did ask one question that had been answered earlier, but not all of us can be on time, you know? It's a struggle. Us district counselors are always running all over the place. So I must admit that many of the folks on my staff benefit from Bluebikes, so they were very excited to have some questions answered about where we're headed, and so we have to cut some of that back, but I think first, what is the current annual revenue? I know you talked about that account. What is the current annual revenue? And I know you say that goes back into maintenance, but I'm just curious what the annual revenue.
So that comes to the city, or just revenues that's brought in by the system?
Brought in by the system. It's
roughly $8 million or so. The operator has to share, it's a little complicated, but share 10% of that with the municipalities. And then there's an additional percentage that they have to share on e-bikes revenues if they meet a certain threshold.
And do you foresee any of the split changing in the new contract?
Probably so. And sorry, it's 10% after the first $3 million. So say $5 million or so is subject to the revenue sharing agreement. 10% of that comes to the municipalities, and then we split it up among ourselves, among the 4 original municipalities, so Boston, Cambridge, Somerville, and Brookline. We split that 10% of 500,000 of 5 million, so 500,000, among ourselves according to our respective shares of the system. So do we expect it to change? Probably so. So that's one of the things that the vendors will put into their price proposals is, we said we want to continue to operate on a revenue sharing model. So you tell us what you think the split should be. I believe, I highly suspect it'll go up. I'm sorry, the share that goes to the vendor will go up, in part because it was a high priority of some of our municipal colleagues to.
Oh, you mean the committee that you were describing under?
Yes.
Okay.
So there have been a lot of new municipalities that have joined since our last contract was executed. They all are paying on a per dock per month basis, and there tend to be small municipalities. So, think of Chelsea or Everett or Revere. And so they have to pay for bike share operations every month. And for them, it's a real disincentive to add new stations. So as soon as they add a new 15 dock station, their monthly bill just went up. And so it's been a strong priority to try to level the playing fields, basically make the same terms and the same model apply to all of the municipalities.
And you said Chelsea and Everett are part of this group.
Correct.
So, I mean, it would obviously be ideal if folks from Chelsea and Everett were biking here and biking back.
Yes, and they do, but it's much more limited in their municipalities because they have this disincentive the municipalities have the disincentive to add more stations. So it's just not as useful of a network to get around. It tends to not be that.
Yeah, unless you live right by one and you can predictably know that it's going to be there.
Correct.
Which is hard to do without there being any level of...
Right. And then a lot of the grant funding that's available through the MPO doesn't cover operations. And so, they can get the capital money to add new stations, but then they don't have the funding to go along with it. So...
Got it. And I know that one of the goals of Go Boston 2030 was to have a bike share within a 10-minute walk of every Boston resident. How far are we from that goal?
And my second,
oh, great. Okay, so my second question is, I know that we've had this discussion in District 8 around additional bike share stations. When is there going to be movement on? I know some of them have been placed, but just curious where that... how those conversations are going.
Yes.
And I know I want to thank for the West End residents. They wanted a bike share station moved across the street, and I know you were able to deliver on that.
Yeah.
The little things really do matter to the neighborhood. So I appreciate Kim, particularly working with you. You're a great partner with the City Council when we have an issue. And as someone who wants to engage in bike share more, I finally have my City of Boston membership. It's making my own bike collect a lot of dust. So I really appreciate, really appreciate your leadership. So I guess, how close are we to the goal of 10-minute
yes.
trip to, which I actually think is kind of far if you think about it.
Yeah.
But hopefully we're almost there. And then with these new bike share stations, when are they going in?
Yeah. So I'm very proud to say we're pretty darn close. We're at about 90% of households within a 10-minute walk. And it's pretty amazing. If you look at the map of Boston, when Go Boston was published in 2017, it's like you could have drawn a line across the city, with the exception of JP. And there was not bike share south of that line. And so that we've come so far in this period of time, it really is because of very intentional planning. When we started saying, this is public transportation by bike, and we have an obligation to really reach all of our residents, that's when that started to change. As far as the expansion, so any minute now, Louise Sagag on my team is going to hit send on an email to you and others.
Well, big shout out to Louisa.
Yes,
she's amazing.
absolutely.
Thank you for her work too.
Yes, and she really gets so much of the credit here in the solving those issues and being incredibly responsive. And also really moving this expansion project along. It's really a bear of a project, and she's doing phenomenal work. So we are very, very close to providing you and others in the last round of expansion, the other districts in the last round of expansion, an update on kind of where we're headed, the plans for the stations in your district. So
And,
we
yeah,
expect
it's
to be doing
always-
those very, very soon in the next,
And it's,
couple months.
it's always a negotiation with the community, but one thing I've noticed is people don't really understand the difference between like city land and state land and how easy it might be for us to put something in one place. And then they really are like, we see all this open space, of where on federal buildings. So I just, I'm always encouraging us to think about like how we can get those memorandums of agreement with other stakeholders, because oftentimes it's like our sidewalk, we have very little space, and then you look across the street and there's tons of room for there to be, space for a Bluebikes ride share station. So
Yeah. We did have a number of stations approved by landmarks in the Fenway and on other parties' property. So that is coming.
awesome. And has BPS been a good partner in making sure that there are Bluebike stations available to Boston Public School students?
Yeah, we've been working with them on a handful of stations, 2 in the South End that I can think of, and there's a third one in the Fenway at BAA. And yeah, all 3 of those were approved. I don't know that any of them were actually on BPS property. They are a little more reluctant, especially in the younger grades, to bring stations into a schoolyard, onto school property, really, unless it's really just along the, public sidewalk or something like that, because they don't want to be bringing people into, the school environment. So that makes sense. But.
And I know there's been some pushback in the Back Bay Fens at having bike stations in the park. I just want to say my public position is not that. It's really that what we don't want is people riding through the Back Bay Fens. So whatever can get them to dock their bike prior to them being, and again, I personally don't think a bike share station necessarily tells people to do a specific thing. It's just, if we want people to be able to access our parks, we do need to have stations that, and I know that was said in a meeting, and I wanted to make sure that my public position on that was known. So there's some wonky questions that my staff wanted me to ask, but I think we need to move on. So I think I just want to state my support for the Safe Streets for All grant. Thank you so much, Lydia, for championing this one. I do think, I think it's a great thing when we have federal money that is really we're entitled to, because we pay so much in taxes. If you kind of Massachusetts, it's funny, it's in the whole California conversation, they clearly are doing their part. We clearly do our part and deserve transportation funds from the federal government. And I'll give the 2022 administration all the credit for this grant, and I do hope that the current administration continues to fill their obligation to give Boston its fair share of resources, given the amount of people and tax dollars that we give to the federal government. And obviously, high crash zones are a core priority of the city and of me as the chair. Even though none of these are in my district, I will acknowledge that safety on our streets goes beyond district lines, and safety for pedestrians is the core priority of the city. It's the core priority of my colleagues, and I think seeing we had an emergency hearing order on our particular area that will be solved by this grant. And so I am grateful that we're getting this moved forward at the next council meeting. Just one more question for you, Kim. Given that this is, there's, and I forget what you call it, but there's a consortium of other cities involved with this, and the Metropolitan Area Council is involved with this. When would we have to execute as a city council on this to make sure that we're doing everything we can to help Boston come to the table with the same agreement as everyone else?
Well, our current contract doesn't expire until April of next year. We The bids are due at the end of this month. So we gave ourselves a pretty big, pretty long timeline, although quite honestly, not as long as we were hoping for, so that we have a lot of time to negotiate the contract. It would be fantastic to have the approval before we go into contract negotiation so that we know what we're negotiating. So, we
Perfect.
expect
Yeah.
to
So-
award the bid in mid-July or so.
Well, and given that we don't have a council meeting this week, we're in what would be the council meeting right now. Next week we have a council meeting, and that's the last one before the end of the month. I will move to get this done next week so that you're going into the RFP process with the other municipalities, with the city council's backing, to engage in the agreement. So I think that's great. We have one person signed up for public testimony. So do you have any other questions, Councilor Weber?
I don't.
Thank you. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to public testimony. Kim and Lydia, thank you so much for all of your work. Thank you to the Transportation Department, in Public Works, and everything that you all do every day to make our streets safer. With that, you both are dismissed, but if you want to stay for the one person signed up for public testimony, that would be great. Gabrielle Lee Williams, you have 2 minutes and you can come up to this podium right here. Yeah, thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. May I request more time from the chair since my elected officials got to have their time waived of 2 minutes? Can I just request more time to speak?
It's a standard, but I will let you finish your thoughts. So feel free to go on for, just try to keep it around 2 minutes if you can.
Of course, have
Thank
to use
you.
the bathroom, so I'll be really fast.
Oh yeah, thank you.
All right. A lot of you know me by face. A lot of you might not know me. Some people know me by name. You guys are about to know me more often now. I just have a few questions if you guys don't ask, not much of a testimony. I just wanted some clarifications. First, I think what you guys are doing is great. Making a sustainable future for the next generation and the generations to come is the end goal of everybody. That's really good. Thank you. And then as far as when it goes towards public safety, thank you for finding and doing these investigations. It's just really an honor to be up here speaking, knowing that Massachusetts is 8 years older than the actual federal government. We wrote our Constitution first, 8 years before they wrote the federal Constitution. So it's actually really great to be up here and continue to set the example for the rest of the world in my home city of Boston. I guess we'll start with the first question, if you guys don't mind. What's the end goal of, what's your mission statement, I should say, for
And I'm sorry, Gabriel, but the way that this works is you publicly testify and we hear you and then we end the hearing. So yeah, generally, and I know this is a hearing that there aren't a lot of people here, but we just try to keep the norms of the, of the body where essentially they're relieved, they're just listening to you testify.
No, that's fine. They don't have to answer. But
Okay, perfect.
But then my
Oh,
question
yeah, go
would be-
ahead.
My
Yeah.
question would be to City Council, then, if that's fine. But do you guys understand what the mission statement is for?
And so, yeah, I'm sorry. We don't respond to public testimony. You just give your public testimony and then we adjourn.
Okay, then I'll just state my questions for the record so that
Okay,
way you guys
perfect.
and the
Yeah,
public
and I'm
can also
sorry.
have these questions.
I just
It's
want to,
fine.
because it's weird because we don't have a lot of people here, but usually there's like a line of people to testify, so the norms are set for that. I'm happy to chat with you as soon as we adjourn.
It's okay. We're all citizens first, and we're all members of the Commonwealth first. So, I understand what you're saying, and we all have to respect that. So, even if there were more people here, that would be really great to hear what they have to say, because it doesn't take an election to have an idea, and we all have a voice. So, thank you for being able to answer my questions later. But I'd still like to ask these questions because the people at home watching might have the same, and it's nice to know that there's somebody who's out there asking these questions for the public. Can I continue?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. I said my first question on the record would be for City Council to find out what the mission statement is. And then further would be my request for City Council, if you guys can get back to me, would be to figure out what's the end goal. Are we moving away from the MBTA so we can sustain on this? That'd be a really great goal if we can just have green renewable energy instead of giant buses congesting our streets. If we can just have that small green renewable bike, that'd be a really good goal. And then who's the target audience? Like, what about disabled people, the elderly, people who might have asthma, people who might have mobility issues, things like that. Yeah, those were the questions that I would have for you guys to ask before you guys go through with this, just to iron out those kinks for the public. Then the other questions would be, these are more geared towards them, but I'll still ask City Council because I know you guys can ask these questions to them privately. But like, when we do develop this, like, what would be the idea of the company stating, okay, we've met our goal? As far, I know they said 80%, but then what does that look like in numbers to like everybody? What is that like to the ratio of like bikes to person? Is it like you guys expect one bike per family household? Like, how does that look? You guys answered the question about who maintains them, which is the private company that you guys have.
And you're at around 3 minutes.
Thank you. And then as far as with these bikes being made and everything and the jobs that will be coming from this, are you guys looking to hire internally, or are you guys looking to hire my fellow constituents of Boston that are out there watching right now? That'd be really great if you guys do hire people in the city. I know there's a lot of high schoolers who just graduated, and a lot of people who just graduated are looking for jobs, and that'd be really good. That'd actually be one way for your company to boost public support, even though you guys already have it. Yeah, that. And then last thing, like, what's the incentive? Like, what's the, like, yes, it's more convenient for me to use my bike, but that's only on good weather. So then, like, what's the incentive that's gonna, like, make this sustainable and make me wanna use this year round instead of using the bus? I know with the bike, I can go places directly without having to walk once I get off the bus, but then it's not the same if it's, like, snowing outside. I know that you can plow the streets and put salt down. What about the sidewalks? And then who's gonna be responsible for making sure that these bike paths are actually paved so that we can use them? Is it gonna be the responsibility of the city paying that, or is it gonna be the responsibility of the company to maintain their bike paths? That just, you guys answered like you guys maintain them, but I just wanted that specific clarity because I would hate to pay any more taxes out.
Thank you so much, Gabriel. We're at almost 5 minutes, so I want to, because we usually give people 2 minutes. So thank you so much. Thank you for coming, and look forward to chatting with you after.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you everybody for watching. Thank you for the 5 minutes, and yeah, that's just been my time.
Thank you so much, and I want to thank you both for being here. And seeing no other public testimony, this hearing on docket 0648 and 0720 is adjourned.